So you don't believe it was a burglary gone wrong? Is that what you're saying?
I believe it was a kidnapping.
All new at 2, Fox News going one-on-one with the Pima County Sheriff, Chris Nanos, as the search for Nancy Guthrie intensifies and investigators zero in on key leads. Welcome to a brand new hour of America Reports. I'm John Roberts. Thank you for filling in this week.
You are most welcome, John. The bill will come later in the week, so look out for that in the mail. It's great to be with you.
The check will be in the mail.
No, thank you. I look forward to receiving it. I'm Jillian Turner in for Sandra today. So this interview now with all these breaking developments come as the sheriff has also been saying that the entire Guthrie family is cleared from this investigation. They are not suspects. We're also getting new details on investigators working directly with Walmart, trying to trace the exact items that the suspect was seen wearing on camera. Let's get straight to Chief Correspondent Jonathan Hunt now, who just sat down with the sheriff for this exclusive interview. Jonathan, lay it out for us. What did you learn?
A lot of breaking news out of this interview, Gillian and John. The sheriff had just come from the latest briefing on this investigation. And I asked him, first of all, about the glove that we've all heard about, the glove that on which they had found DNA, which was being tested and was going to then be entered into the FBI's CODIS system, which is the national tracking system for DNA that they might have from people who have committed crimes in the past. His answer to that: not good news for the investigation. Listen here to the sheriff.
The DNA on the glove that was found 2 miles away was submitted for CODIS, and I just heard that CODIS had no hits.
No hits on the DNA found in the glove?
Correct.
So you are no closer to a suspect as a result of the DNA test, at least?
As a result of CODIS.
Now, remember also, we broke the news last Friday that they had tested also DNA that was found inside Nancy Guthrie's house that they believed was stranger DNA. Well, the sheriff also told us no CODIS hit on that DNA either. Then I talked to him about this reporting that has been out there, not repeated by us, that this was a burglary gone wrong. The sheriff said it was not. Listen again to the sheriff.
You just said you, and your briefings, you believe it's a kidnapping?
I believe it was a kidnapping.
Targeted kidnapping?
Yes, I believe whoever did that knew what they were up to.
So do you believe
knew who they were after?
So we also talked to the sheriff about these reports of the FBI going to gun stores. They have indeed been going to gun stores, but there was a report out there that they had narrowed it down essentially to 40 suspects they were asking about and showing pictures of. Here's the sheriff's response to that.
Tell me this if you can, Sheriff. Is everybody in Tucson still a suspect, or have you narrowed it down to, say, a few dozen people? We've heard, for instance, the FBI is asking about 40 people at gun stores.
That's not true.
Okay, so have you narrowed it down to a few dozen, or are we still...
We haven't narrowed it down to anything other than we have certain pieces of evidence that we're looking at to try to find this individual, whether it be DNA, whether it be that Ring camera video, whether it be evidence at a Walmart that might lead us to somebody.
Couple of other important points from this wide-ranging interview, John and Gillian. I asked the sheriff if there are any indications at all that Nancy Guthrie may have been taken across the border into Mexico, just about 65 miles or so south of us here. He said no indications of that. He said he believes the FBI has been checking that, but no indications of that at this point. And I followed up with him on the news that he put out a statement about yesterday, the clearing the Guthrie family, their siblings and spouses. He said to me, 100% they are victims, not connected. So a lot of news, but the bad news in terms of the investigation, that DNA, neither the DNA in the house or the DNA on the glove coming back with a hit on the FBI's national database. I hate to use the phrase back to square one, John and Gillian, but if we are talking about the squares that have been moved forward, we're certainly in the low single digits in terms of this investigation. John and Gillian?
I mean, it's also got to be pretty disappointing, for lack of a better word, for the family watching this to hear him say they haven't narrowed down the search to anybody, meaning no suspects right now.
Extraordinary, Gillian. When you talk to him, and you can feel the frustration in the sheriff. Obviously, he has come in for some criticism from some quarters, but I will say now, having got to know him a little bit over the last 16 days that we've been here, he is a man who wants to solve this crime, quite obviously. He has decades in law enforcement. There's Monday morning quarterbacking going on. Maybe some mistakes have been made. That's not for me to say. But this is a man who has a lot of compassion for the Guthrie family, really wants, just like every single law enforcement official on the ground here, they want to solve this case. But clearly, they are very frustrated, and clearly they are struggling to find out where Nancy Guthrie is and who took her.
So, Jonathan, here's something that a lot of folks I talk to are trying to wrap their head around. If this was not a robbery gone bad, if it was a kidnapping, but this idea that the ransom notes was a dead end, and we're not hearing anything from kidnappers. I mean, the object of kidnapping is you get something for the person that you've kidnapped. So what's this all about?
Well, that's an open question, John, and a very good question. I asked the sheriff about the ransom notes, and he said that is mainly an investigative lead for the FBI. Clearly, the ransom notes have not been ruled inauthentic or entirely authentic at this point. But the sheriff was quite adamant, not a burglary. I did ask him about, was anything taken at all? He said he couldn't talk about that. I asked him again about the forced entry or no forced entry. He wouldn't talk about that. And he said quite plainly, there are things we are not going to tell you because they are so germane to this investigation that they could compromise this investigation if we tell you. And as we've said throughout, John, they have every right to keep whatever information they want from us. But clearly, yeah, it's a struggle. But equally clearly, the sheriff believes in his gut. And I asked him his gut as a decades-long law enforcement officer what he thinks this is. And he said, I believe it is a kidnapping, not a burglary gone wrong.
All right, well, we'll see if we ever hear from the kidnappers. Jonathan Hunt for us with the latest. Jonathan, thank you. Let's bring in Fox News contributor and criminal defense attorney Josh Ritter for more on this. Josh, put it all together for us. We got DNA on the glove that doesn't match anybody in the CODIS base, which just means that whoever had the DNA on the glove, whoever was wearing the glove, is probably not a convicted criminal. We got different DNA in the house. The sheriff thinks it's a kidnapping, not a robbery gone bad, yet there's nothing from the kidnappers. So where does the case stand at this point?
I don't think there's an easy way of putting it that it's discouraging. These appear to be setbacks. You were hoping for some sort of hit, some sort of lead, some sort of way to move the investigation forward with that glove that they found. But especially discouraging is the idea that the glove doesn't even match the DNA inside of the home, so we can't even determine at this point if the glove is even involved or if it's just a false lead, just some random glove that was left behind. And the idea that the DNA, the unidentified DNA found inside the home, which is their best lead as far as the forensic goes, comes back to nothing. In CODIS, again, yes, it's nice that they have a sample, but now they don't have anything to do with that sample unless they're testing it against people that they're detaining. As far as the comments about whether or not this was a kidnapping, a residential burglary gone bad, I think it's really a distraction at this point because that person showed up with obvious bad intentions. He's got a mask on, he's got gloves on, he's got a gun, he's got a backpack. He's going inside that home to commit some sort of crime and perhaps most likely some sort of crime of violence, whether or not that's a kidnapping, whether or not he showed up to take things from the home. I don't think that gets us any closer to finding the individual or finding Nancy, and kind of quibbling over words or what his intentions were just seems like we're debating over theories, especially when it's coming from law enforcement. You would think the focus would just be on finding new evidence and finding suspects, which apparently at this point they have none.
Josh, this is Jillian. It struck me when the sheriff said in response to Jonathan's question that they have not, he asked him if they had narrowed this down to a few dozen potential suspects. And the sheriff said, well, we haven't narrowed it down to anybody. And they have been saying they don't have a suspect. So in a sense, it's not new. But hearing him put it like that was just especially, I don't know, disappointing. If you're the family listening to that, what do you read into it?
It's very disappointing. We're now into week 3. 16 days that she's been missing, and you would think that they would at least have a pool of likelies, a pool of possible people of interest that they would be working off of. But the idea, according to the sheriff, that this is just wide open, everybody in the area and beyond is a suspect. To me, you know, Jonathan said, if we're not at square one, we're in the low digits. I agree. It does seem as though this investigation is not all that further along than it was initially. And it's starting, yes, is it disappointing, discouraging, frustrating? We're hoping there might be more taking place behind the scenes we're not aware of. But as we stand here right now, it does not seem hopeful.
So one of the things that might be going on, because you don't get a DNA match with CODIS from the DNA that was in the house or the DNA from the glove, do they now move to IGG, investigative genetic genealogy, as they did in the Koberger case, to see if they can come up with a match?
Absolutely, and I'm glad that you referenced the Koberger case, because one glimmer of hope that we can glean out of that is that in the Koberger case, they had actually identified through the reconstruction of a family tree and the use of IgG, they had identified Koberger as a suspect, and that was not information shared for 11 days until he was actually arrested. So it could be that they're well on their way to trying to at least narrow down relatives of who this person is, especially the unidentified DNA recovered from the home. They've had that for some time now. Hopefully that is the next step that they've already taken, but they have not shared whether or not that process is underway or not.
All right, well, we'll see where it goes from here, but it's certainly puzzling. Josh Ritter for us. Josh, thanks for kicking us off. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.
No match so far for the DNA in Nancy Guthrie's home and the glove that was found about 2 miles from her property. That is what the sheriff is telling Fox News.
The DNA on the glove that was found 2 miles away was submitted for CODIS, and I just heard that CODIS had no hits.
No hits on the DNA found in the glove?
Correct.
So you are no closer to a suspect as a result of the DNA test, at least?
As a result of CODIS.
Chief Correspondent Jonathan Hunt speaking with the sheriff there. He joins us live in Tucson, along with retired homicide detective John Bueller, who investigated Lacey Peterson's disappearance in 2002. Her husband, Scott, was later convicted of killing her and their unborn son, Connor. Gentlemen, welcome. Jonathan?
Yeah, Martha, it was a fascinating conversation with the sheriff today. By the way, there was one point, you remember, earlier today we saw SWAT vehicles roll out of here. The only other time they've rolled out has been when they have been on their way to detain people and execute search warrants. What sheriff told us today, Tuesday is training day, so you don't need to read anything into the SWAT vehicles going out today, apparently, at this point. But everything else he told us did not appear to be good news for the investigation, Martha. First of all, as you just played that soundbite, no match in the FBI's CODIS National Criminal Database for the DNA found in the glove. So then I asked him also about the DNA that was found inside the house and whether that was even the same as the DNA found in the glove. Listen here to his answer.
So let me ask you, is there a match on the DNA in the glove to the DNA, the unknown DNA that you found in the house?
There's no match to the DNA at the house.
So entirely separate DNA?
Correct.
Okay, so that would mean, if there's no, is there a CODIS match from the DNA in the house?
No.
So not good news, Martha, for the investigation or for the Guthrie family, of course, on that basis, at least where the DNA has been tested so far, Martha.
Let's bring in John Bueller. Thank you, Jonathan. John Bueller, retired homicide detective. John, your reaction to that, tell me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that what that really means is that the person who committed this crime, who took Nancy Guthrie, just isn't already in a crime database for the DNA, right?
Yeah, you got it precisely right on that. And although it is not great news today that the glove didn't match the foreign DNA that was found in the house, that doesn't mean that the foreign DNA can't be matched to a suspect if he's found at a later time with another means. It just means it's going to be taking a little bit longer to determine who this person is. And even long ago, when the glove, you know, great distance away from the house was first found, I wasn't necessarily convinced that it was related to Nancy's abduction because there was nothing that said for sure on that. It just was similar, and it could have been. But the DNA that was present in the house, foreign, not belonging there, is the one that I'm more interested than anything else. A little bit longer to find out who did it. It would have been a shortcut if we would have gotten good results today.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jonathan, it seems that the DNA that was found in the house that is not a match to people who are known to be in that house on a regular basis is obviously the real focus here. That DNA, I think it's safe to assume, belongs to the person who we see in the video at the front door, right?
That would be an absolutely reasonable assumption, Martha. So that is clearly the focus. But again, it's not in the CODIS database. So as you were just saying, that would appear to mean that the person who left that DNA there has not been convicted of the kind of crime that would get them into CODIS. So it's a longer search, exactly that. I also asked the sheriff, by the way, Martha, about this theory that had been going around in the media, in certain quarters of the media, that this was in fact a burglary gone wrong, not a targeted kidnapping. His answer to that, very interesting. Listen to that now.
Just said you, and your briefings, you believe it's a kidnapping.
I believe it was a kidnapping.
Targeted kidnapping.
Yes, I believe whoever did that knew what they were up to.
So do you believe
knew who they were after?
Yeah, John Buehler, your
so
reaction.
So the sheriff said that came from his... Sorry, Martha, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, the sheriff was saying that that came not just from the investigative evidence that he has seen, but also from his gut feelings of decades in law enforcement. He absolutely does not believe this was a burglary. And sorry for interrupting you, Martha. Back to you.
Thank you. Great interview. John Buehler, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I can't find any fault with that. Residential burglary is generally carried out by somebody who's looking for property only. They probably don't have it pre-planned enough to have a place to put somebody like Nancy if they decided to abduct her. You can't rule it out entirely, but it's on the likelihood. It's kind of like a Powerball ticket. They don't happen every day, and so I wouldn't be looking at that, and I totally agree with the sheriff on that.
Yeah, extraordinary and just so excruciating for her family. To not be getting anywhere at this point in terms of what this person's motive might have been and what happened after they kidnapped Nancy Guthrie. Where is she now is the big question, obviously, and they stay at it day after day. Thank you both so much.
Joining me now is president and founder of Identifiers International Forensic Genealogy, Dr. Colleen Fitzpatrick. Dr. Fitzpatrick, you have a lot here that I want to talk to you about. You have a lot of interesting observations. But first, I just want to get your reaction to what you just heard from the sheriff of Pima County and his suspicion that this is a targeted kidnapping.
Well, first of all, I have high confidence that that agency is doing the best they can. We have to trust them. We have to trust their experience. So whatever he believes, I have to go with. There is not a whole lot that they are releasing for a lot of reasons. Now, I did have one question I have. The sheriff says it's a targeted kidnapping. I'm wondering if it has ever been considered, if this was a mistake. This man went to go, say, burglar or kidnap in another house, and he got the wrong house. Is that a possibility? Could he have gone in the house and he didn't see anything he recognized? He was after something else, either whatever you can burgle from a house. Maybe it was papers, maybe it was documents relating to some business activity. I don't know. He got in the house and he realized he was in the wrong house. He saw Nancy in the house, an elderly woman, and she knew he was there, and the only thing he could do was carry her away with him. Is that a possibility? Now, that has happened before. Michael Jordan's father was killed, and they didn't know it was him until after they heard it in the news later. You know, the two girls, it was 1993, and two guys, stole his car, shot him, and they didn't know who he was. So is it possible that this was a mistake? And really, even though we have to catch the guy, even though we have to figure it out, there's really no motive. got
Okay,
it. You know,
Dr. Fitzpatrick, you gave an interview to our producers a little bit earlier in the day, and in that interview, there were some fascinating observations that you came away with that I wanted to share with the audience. I wanted to hear from you about. One, you suspect that there's 2 pairs of gloves being worn by this perpetrator. You also suggest because of that fact, he would have been unable to use the gun, and you have some takeaways from that observation.
Well, yeah, I mean, the gloves, if you look at the fingers, the thickness of the gloves, he may have had 2 pairs on there. And how is he going to fire a gun with gloves of that, thickness? You need to put your finger on the trigger and pull the trigger. He can't do that. I think that the gun was there to threaten somebody, not necessarily to harm somebody, because that's not how you carry a gun, hanging from your belt into your crotch. Usually law enforcement officers have it on their hip where they can reach. It's on their strong side and they can reach. You don't dangle your gun from your belt, your belly. So I think that, it doesn't make sense almost. He didn't seem to know what he was doing. He was not prepared he didn't realize there was a Nest cam there. He didn't realize he didn't have anything to block it. A piece of tape would have been easy to block that camera. He didn't have it, so he pulled some flowers from the garden.
Right. You point out as well in your interview that while it's possible he could have carried a body or a person some distance, not long distances, which would have then implicated he has some accomplice somewhere along the way, possibly on video somewhere in this case. It's great to talk to you. Thank you for being with us here today, Dr. Fitzpatrick.
You're welcome.
Meantime, the sheriff of Pima County, Arizona, says the DNA on that glove found near the home of Nancy Guthrie did not match any information in the FBI records. That's a development. Chief Correspondent Jonathan Hunt talked with Sheriff Chris Nanos today. Jonathan's live tonight in Tucson with the latest. Good evening, Jonathan.
Good evening to you, Brett. Very little in our wide-ranging interview appeared to be good news for the Guthrie family or the progress of this investigation. Starting with the news the sheriff had been given just minutes before our interview began about the DNA on the glove that had been considered potentially key evidence.
The DNA on the glove that was found 2 miles away was submitted for CODIS. And I just heard that CODIS had no hits.
No hits on the DNA found in the glove?
Correct.
So you are no closer to a suspect as a result of the DNA test, at least?
As a result of CODIS.
CODIS is the FBI's database, and no match in that would mean whoever took Nancy Guthrie has never before been arrested for a serious crime that would have led to a DNA sample being taken. The sheriff also confirmed a dead end so far on DNA found inside Nancy Guthrie's home.
So let me ask you, is there a match on the DNA in the glove to the DNA, the unknown DNA that you found in the house?
There's no match to the DNA at the house.
So entirely separate DNA?
Correct.
Okay, so that would mean if there's no, is there a CODIS match from the DNA in the house?
No.
The sheriff also refuted suggestions that Nancy Guthrie's abduction might have been the result of a burglary gone wrong.
I believe it's a kidnapping.
I believe it was a kidnapping.
Targeted kidnapping.
Yes, I believe whoever did that knew what they were up to.
So do you believe
knew who they were after?
So we asked the sheriff as well if it was a kidnapping in his view. Is there any indication that Nancy Guthrie may have been taken the 60 miles south of Tucson to the Mexico border? He said there is, at this point, no indication of that. So to sum up our interview, Brett, it might be harsh to say that investigators are back at square one, but there is clearly frustration in the words of the sheriff that we, quote, haven't narrowed it down yet to anything. Brett?
Jonathan Hunt in Tucson. Jonathan.
We are on day 17 in the search for Nancy Guthrie, but it feels like we're back at square one. Sheriff Nanos confirming to Fox's Jonathan Hunt today that the DNA found on the glove does not match any of the DNA found in the house. And it appears they're no closer to figuring out who the suspect is.
We haven't narrowed it down to anything other than we have certain pieces of evidence that we're looking at to try to find this individual. Whether it be DNA, whether it be that ring camera video, whether it be evidence at a Walmart that might lead us to somebody.
Was there anything taken from the home other than Nancy Guthrie?
I cannot say that.
Was there sign of a struggle in the home?
I can't comment to what happened in that home or didn't happen.
Out of uniform, that's kind of interesting. Here to respond is Stuart Kaplan, former FBI special agent, and Callahan Walsh, co-host of America's Most Wanted. Okay, Stuart, what now? I think people held out hope that a glove, which, I mean, you find gloves everywhere these days on the side of the road, but, and why won't the sheriff tell us more about what happened inside the house?
Thank you for having me, Laura. Let me start this way. It's what the FBI is not telling us. I know my agency. I can tell you that they are in a deep dive in forensic analysis. I think they are very concerned about protecting very sensitive techniques that have been deployed in this particular case. I think they are concerned about avoiding jeopardizing future prosecutions because quite frankly, they don't want those techniques, those sensitive forensic techniques that have in fact been utilized in this case, to be known or published to the public. I will even go as far as saying, Laura, when I see my agency go dark or go silent, I do believe that they have a person or persons of interest. I think they are sifting through the analysis. I've said it time and time again. I think they are concerned about getting the right person right. I think they're exercising a measured approach. But let me tell you, the FBI is disciplined. This is the best FBI on the planet. They're doing what they're tasked to do. They're staying on point.
I hope you're right. Callahan, we're also learning that genetic genealogy testing is now being used in this case. The FBI told Fox Digital that investigative genetic genealogy is going to, they hope, identify potential relatives through public genealogy databases when traditional law enforcement databases like CODIS produce no matches. So Callahan, is this like Ancestry or 23andMe, those types of deals?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Now, without the hit in CODIS, they need to expand their search. And luckily, we do have access to these databases. Thousands and thousands of people have put their DNA into these private databases, but it will take a bit longer. You know, FBI is able to access CODIS right away. That's their database. But it's going to take some time for them to be able to go through these other databases. And let's hope there's a hit. Let's hope that they are able to find somebody out there that's related to this individual, that has done their ancestry report, that their DNA is on file, because I think we all put a lot of eggs in that basket that glove would come back with a match, and unfortunately it didn't pan out.
Yeah, Stuart, Sheriff Nanos has been very sensitive to the criticism he's received from early on. He's kind of pushed back on this in various interviews, but he's also given an evolving answers on whether or not he thinks that this is a targeted kidnapping. Watch.
Is there any indication so far as to whether this was a random abduction or targeted?
It's like I said earlier, you know, we're looking at all the leads, and we don't know. We're going to assume both sides of that. Obviously, I misspoke, or maybe somebody misheard me, but I've never believed that she was or was not a target.
You believe it's a kidnapping?
I believe it was a kidnapping.
Targeted kidnapping.
Yes, I believe whoever did that knew what they were up to.
Stuart, he seems pretty clear on this now, but again, I think the public was very confused, and maybe that was part of the just normal process. But there's just so many unanswered questions. To me, it's a little odd that it's discounted, the burglary, botched burglary idea. Do you discount that at this point?
Well, I'll say this, Laura. I think they obviously have a lot more information. Obviously, they know what the crime scene looked like. They know whether or not personal items were taken. They know a lot more than they're telling. But what I think is doing a disservice to the men and women who are on the ground is it undermines the confidence in saying that our law enforcement partners are doing everything that they can possibly do. And I think to some extent the sheriff does a disservice by giving these mumble jumble or these confusing explanations or holding back obvious information such as what was taken from the house. Now, I get, because I've been on the other side, why you don't want to reveal that. I just think it erodes the confidence.
Yeah. Callahan, do you agree?
I do. You know, it's tough because law enforcement has to play that fine line. They want to have the public have confidence in them. They want to be able to keep the public up to speed, but they can't share everything with the public. And so that makes it a very difficult task for law enforcement. And hindsight is always 20/20. We can always say, hey, this should have been done differently. This should have never happened. And you know, investigations are never a seamless operation. You know, it's just real police work that needs to be done behind the scenes. You know, you release too much information and you have conspiracy theorists going in a million different directions. You'll also get thousands and thousands of erroneous tips as well, too. And that's a big part of this case now.
All right. Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.